TRT World, you're watching. Let's stay with the desperate search for survivors of the quakes. The United Nations has described this as a race against time and has appealed to the international community to be generous with its support. So let's get more from our United Nations correspondent, Frank Usiado.
We are joined now by Stephane Dujarric. He is the spokesperson for the UN Secretary-General here at the Secretariat building. Stephane, thank you for joining us here on TRT World. First, I'd like to get some of the latest information that you're hearing from your assessment teams that are on the ground. What do you hear today?
Well, you know, what we're hearing is, in fact, what your viewers are seeing, is utter devastation, search and rescue still going on, all of that in the midst of very, very harsh winter conditions. We are continuing to conduct assessments. Obviously, we know what we know, but there are areas which we've still not been able to get to, which I know the authorities in Turkey have still not been able to get to. But we are already working, distributing aid on both sides of the border.
What about the money that's necessary? I understand there's going to be a ramp-up of funding by the UN here?
Yeah, I mean, we clearly will need a huge amount of money to support the millions of people who've been impacted by this. We've just released $25 million from our Central Emergency Fund, which is a way to kickstart the funding. But these are just reserve funds that we have. We will go and launch a humanitarian appeal soon, which means we'll have to go out hand in hand in order to get more funding, and you know, we're talking about a long-term project here.
Can you talk about some of the UN agencies that were already in place before the earthquake and uniquely positioned to start to address and mobilize for this crisis?
Well, yes. I mean, we're talking about an area around Gaziantep in southern Turkey and in northwest Syria, where there was already a very prominent UN presence because of the humanitarian situation in northwest Syria, because of the refugees in southern Turkey. So the myriad of UN agencies, UNICEF, the UN Refugee Agency, WHO, the World Health Organization, were already present. In northwest Syria, we had some aid pre-positioned, so we were able to distribute some of that. And in southern Turkey, I know UNHCR is working hand in glove with the Turkish authorities, distributing tents, plastic sheeting, sort of what people need immediately in order to find some sort of shelter from the cold.
Now, what has this done in terms of possible interruptions for the cross-border aid going from Turkey into Syria?
Well, we have one cross-border point which is authorized by the Security Council, the Bab al-Hawab. The road there has been damaged. We're trying to figure out how to repair it as quickly as possible. But at this point, no aid has been able to flow through that border point. But as I said, we've had some aid preposition in the northwest and in Syria, and we also are working, hopefully next week, to have what we call a cross-line humanitarian convoy, which means it goes from the government-controlled areas in Syria to the non-governmental controlled areas.
Have you been able to address how many refugee numbers have been affected by this?
Well, we know that I think in southern Turkey, about 10 provinces were hit. About 1.7 million refugees were living in those areas. So it is damage not only obviously to the refugee community, but to the generous host communities in Turkey who've been hosting Syrian men, women, and children for so many years. And in northwest Syria, this was an area that already had a displaced population. In that area, about more than 4 million people already relied on humanitarian aid in order to get by. So you could just imagine the needs that'll come through.
We're hearing from the Syrian side in this issue and crisis that they are opposing opening up another access route for aid, but they're also saying that any aid that comes into the country has to go through their hands before it gets to the people.
You know, we're working very closely with the Syrian government, and again through cross-line. We'll bringing in aid from Lebanon and from Jordan towards Damascus, and then to be distributed in those areas that are needed, because obviously earthquakes respect no line, so there is damage on both in both areas, and we also have a mandate which we'll continue to exploit through the cross-border point between Turkey and Syria.
One final point, what is the one thing that the United Nations needs from its member states to address the crisis in Turkey and northwestern Syria?
It'll be cash. It'll be money to fund the humanitarian operations. But I can say it's already, I think, heartwarming to see the international response from countries across the political spectrum, so to speak, who are ready to help Turkey and help Syria.
Okay. Stephane Dujarric, he is the spokesperson for the UN Secretary General and the United Nations here. I'm Frank Uciarda. Let's go back to the studio.
Frank, thank you very much indeed.